Welcome to MMA on the Rise. I'm your host, Tom Ziegler. Tonight we'll be featuring another fight from Fight Lab 20 at Coyote Joe's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Athletic fighters Owens and Brian Kamolinski go at it in the cage. We'll also be featuring our promoter matchmaker on the Rise, Michael Cornbread Allen.
All right, next up, we got Owens versus Brian Kamolinski. Now, if you guys don't know this out there, we are now into our pro fights. There's a big difference between the pro fights and the amateur fights. For one, pro fighters are allowed to kick to the head. They're allowed to elbow to the head. The rounds are 5 minutes, standing 5 minutes each, and it's just going to bring the whole entire different mindset to for the fighters.
Yeah, it definitely changes things without question. The elbows, the knees to the head, the kicks to the head, all illegal in amateur fighting. When it gets to the pros, different story. Got to change up what you do.
Ladies and gentlemen, this fight is brought to you by Samsmart with great gas pricing and drive-through car wash service. Your referee is Mr. Donnie Jessup. Ladies and gentlemen, first let me introduce to you, fighting out of the blue side of the cage, wearing the blue trunks trimmed in white. He stands 5 foot 8 inches tall, weighing in at 150 pounds. His record, 1 win against only 2 losses. Representing Team So-Wide Academy and Triangle Jiu-Jitsu. Originally from Gulfport, Mississippi, now fighting, training, and living in the city of Medicine, Durham, North Carolina. Please welcome to the cage, Dewan Dirty South Owens! His opponent, fighting out of the red side of the cage, wearing the red trunks trimmed in black and white. Standing 5 foot 9 inches tall, weighing in at 145 pounds. Representing The Rock MMA out of Cornelius, North Carolina. Please welcome to the cage, Cocky Brian Kamolinski. Your referee is Donnie Jessup.
Donnie Jessup giving the final instructions to both fighters there. Kamolinski sporting the red trunks, Owens sporting the blue trunks.
And this will be our first pro fight of the night on the Fight Lab 20 MMA card in Charlotte, North Carolina, Coyote Joe's. You're watching MMA on the Rise. Here we go with the first round.
Owens quickly takes the center of the cage.
Both fighters throwing feeler jabs, and there's a kick and an exchange to get it started.
You know, after that one exchange, looks like Kamolinski is already showing some wear on that eye of his.
Yeah, immediately switched levels to go for a takedown. Owens stuffed it. Scott Owens against the cage. He's got an underhook on the right side.
Eating some knees on the way in, though.
Yeah, no. Owens is landing some knees from off the cage.
Kamolinski going for a single. Goes for an outside trip. Owens too strong. Shakes him off.
Strong hips.
Good whizzer by Owens there, too.
Still going for that single leg. He's taking his back.
Yes! Keep that nerve! Keep that nerve! Get up, go on, get up!
Kamolinski pop his head out. He is on top. Yeah, he does. And he's going for the back of Dewan Owens.
Kamolinski's got Owens' back. We'll see what he can do here. Owens fighting the hands.
Kamolinski very high on Dewan Owens. I mean, Dewan Owens standing straight up. That takes a toll on your legs. That's the top guy.
Another nice knee. Those are going to take their toll.
Absolutely.
Cross-faced one!
Kamolinski going for that single leg again. He gets it, but he's giving up his back. Owens is transitioning to the back every time. He's actually got an arm bar there if he wants it.
The problem is he's successful with the takedown, but he's not getting his arm out quick enough when Dewan Owens hits the mat.
He's switching to double leg. You see what he does here. Gets a good lift, good takedown. Good scramble by Owens, showing that athleticism. Owens lands on top. Kamolinski's got the butterfly going feet and hips.
Looks like he's caught in his shorts there.
Trying to get a good vantage point.
Owens landing punches and elbows.
He's throwing bombs. He's throwing bombs. He's landing too.
Kamolinski's
covering up.
Yeah, that's it. Game over.
Referee has seen enough. Kamolinski pretzeled up. Wanted no more of the overwhelming barrage of strikes from Dewan Owens.
Like we said, Dewan Owens very explosive. Once he hit Kamolinski, once he smelled blood, he was just relentless with the strikes. I don't think anyone could have survived that barrage of punches there.
No question. Definitely shows some explosiveness. Definitely showed some athleticism. Kamolinski showing some class. He'll go back to the drawing board. That's 5 pro fights lost in a row. Fighters got to wonder, what he's doing wrong. He had his moments. He showed good wrestling. He showed good takedowns. Not sure what else he could have done here against the explosive athlete of Dewan Owens, but he's going to go figure it out. Tough guy, warrior spirit. Give him credit for entering the cage, but hats off to Dewan Owens. Had his opportunity, got his opponent in a good position, and then unleashed. He's a finisher.
Referee Donnie Jessup calls a halt to the action. Your winner by strikes, Dewan 37.
Owens coming out the victor now, 2-2 with a pro.
Me? I'm gonna conquer a dream. I'm not stopping till the road ends.
I'm going where the wind takes me.
Me? I'm not making any more excuses.
Joseph El Dingo Loco Carroll here. You're watching MMA on the Rise.
My name is Michael Allen. I work for Fight Lab Promotions. My nickname's Cornbread. Crazy nickname, I know, came from when I was doing shoot fighting and catch wrestling up with Johnny Husky's Submission in Asheville. We went to a restaurant, Golden Corral. I just got through cutting a whole lot of weight, and my teammates took my salad and my food and messed with it. I hate cheese, I hate mayonnaise and creamy products, and I ended up catching a cramp and had to go to the bathroom. When I came back out, my food was all messed up, and these guys, trying to be the jokesters they are, had put all that different stuff in my salad, and I just flipped out in Golden Corral. We ended up getting kicked out of the restaurant. It was a horrible experience. When I came back to Asheville and they told my coach about it, he said that I was acting like Eddie Murphy on Life when Bernie Mac said, "You gonna eat your cornbread?" And the name just stuck, And I've tried to fight it off, and it's went from cornbread to Mr. Bread to the Bread to the Bread. you know, it's a good nickname, I guess. Better to have a good nickname than not have one at all. I've been a matchmaker now for going on 4 years. Started with Kenny Letts and Fight Lab Promotions. Sort of funny how it came about. I was supposed to be fighting on the card for Misery Loves Company 1. Suffered a serious hand injury at my job. Ended up having to have reconstructive surgery on my left hand, had pins sticking out of it, so obviously there was no way I was going to be able to fight. We had a pretty big team up at Team Husky at the time in Asheville, and Kenny said that he needed some fighters. Well, we got to talking, you know, about who from our team was going to fight, and he was telling me the rest of the card, and, you know, I just said, you know, I told him, I said, look, I said, you know, this fight looks good, but you could do this better, or you could move this guy with that guy. And he took my advice, and then it went from there, and he ended up letting me work for him on Misery Loves Company 2. I actually worked the first 2 shows for free, and it just took off from there, and I mean, it's been a great experience for me. You know, matchmaking is exactly what it says. It's matchmaking, and you know, you're never going to get it perfect in everyone's eyes. You know, so I do the best job I can. I try to pit the guys against each other based on their skill sets that I see. A lot goes into it. It's not always, you know, cut straight down the middle. Just because I want fighter A to fight fighter B doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. You know, they've got coaches and support groups, wives, girlfriends, things like that that have various input into whether they fight or not. So I don't always get the matchups that I want, but, you know, 9 out of 10 times it works pretty good for me. Matchmaking is like driving a car. When you think of it this way, anyone can get in a car and drive, as long as you've got your license. Anyone can get a matchmaker's license, so anyone can do it. But just like that car, not everyone can drive NASCAR. So not everybody can be a good, efficient matchmaker. A lot goes into it. It's not just about pitting the fighters against each other. You know, you got to make sure that the fighters have their medicals. You got to make sure that they have their contracts in. You got to make sure that the matchups are approved by the commission. You know, the commission's not going to approve a 0-0 guy versus a guy with 10 fights. And then on the flip side of that, there are circumstances where you may have a guy who's 0-0, but he may be a collegiate All-American or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and the commission may approve that. So you have to be able to present your case to the commission as to why this matchup makes sense and why it doesn't make sense. And you know, when you look at the various promotions in the Southeast, you know, it really tells who has the good matchmakers and who don't. You know, the guys that's doing you know, 1 or 2 fights and then they're out, you never hear from them again. And then you've got companies, you know, like Fight Lab and Wild Bills, you know, down in Atlanta. You know, those companies, you know, doing 20 fights. They're on their 40th fight. You know, the consistency is there, and a lot of that goes back to the matchmaking. Usually, when I'm looking to match fighters up, of course, you know, the first thing I look for is it going to be a draw? Is the public going to be interested in the fight? When you get to a certain level, you know, the beginner levels of amateur, you know, I can sort of just throw them together, and you know, whoever wins wins. Once you get up into like the title picture and the #1 contender fights for amateurs, then you start getting into, you know, what's going to be an interesting fight, what's going to be a draw, what's going to sell tickets, and do those fighters have a certain persona to them, you know. Then when you get into the pro ranks, it really does become a big overall picture, and it really a lot of the bearing has to do financially. You know, the fighters have to make money. Unfortunately, we're not the UFC. No one's the UFC, so a lot of the times the fighters are getting paid off a percentage of their tickets. That's just as much my responsibility as it is theirs. So, you know, I like to put fighters on the card that I know is going to be a good ticket draw. They're going to get paid. We're going to get paid. The fans are going to enjoy the fight. As far as the matchups, you know, I want to see an exciting fight. I don't want to see a guy that's going to lay on another guy. You know, obviously, if you take a really good collegiate wrestler who's afraid to get punched in the face, and you put him in there with a guy whose strength is on the ground, but maybe he's scared to go for submissions, well, now you got a guy that's scared to get punched in the face, taking down a guy who's scared to attack from his back. You know, so I just can't have that, because that'd be 3 5-minute rounds of lay and pray. You know, we do a real good job of before the fight. You know, I always talk to the fighters and I tell them, you know, if you fight hard, we'll bring you back. I don't know for a fact that has any bearing on what happens in our cage, but I do know this. We do tend to put on the more exciting fights that I've ever seen. As far as the skill level, you know, North Carolina is a young state. We're only 3 years into it as a state. South Carolina is only 1 year into it. Obviously, Georgia in the Southeast has the most experience. I think they may be 20 years into it or somewhere around through there. The one thing I will say about North Carolina, and I think this has a lot to do with the newness of the sport, is that the fighters here, you know, they're very courageous. they don't leave anything, you know, to be desired. They're willing to take risks. Now, as we progress in the sport and, you know, and coaches start to strategize a little bit more, I don't know how much that will stick, but we definitely have some really high-level athletes here in the Southeast, especially in North Carolina. And like I said, the guys aren't afraid to take a risk, so it makes it for some very exciting fights. On a national level, we still got a way to go. As of right now, there's only been 2 fighters from North Carolina in the UFC, Rodney Wallace and Spencer Fisher. Spencer Fisher, you really can't count him from North Carolina because he moved to Iowa for his training. So as of today, we've only had 1 guy from North Carolina actually in the UFC, and that's Rodney Wallace. And you know, he had his time and then he came out, and I'm sure he'll be back there again because he's a very talented fighter. We've got some up-and-coming talent, you know, Jordan Rinaldi, Keith Richardson, Ricky Rainey. I think you talked to him a little bit earlier. You know, those guys are really athletic, they're really skilled, and they're just super explosive. You know, so I can see those 3 guys making it in the UFC by the end of next year, if not this year. Unfortunately, there's always a technical difference in the difference of an amateur fighter and a pro fighter, and that technical difference is, in the state of North Carolina, if you have 5 amateur fights, well, you could be a pro. So sometimes it's nothing more than a number. As far as the actual skill set, you know, a professional fighter who's serious is going to put his work in, not just, you know, fighting, you know, as many professional 5-minute fights as he can, but he's going to be a professional in the gym. He's going to be a professional outside of the gym. He's going to be a professional promoting himself. And, you know, that again, that goes back into, you know, our sport being really new here in North Carolina. I see a lot of guys, you know, that's turning pro, and, you know, physically they may be ready to turn pro. Technically they may be ready to turn pro, but as far as their professionalism, they're not. And so I would like to see a little bit more, you know, coaching from whoever's mentoring them, their support group, you know, as far as teaching them, you know, about being professional, as far as showing up on time, making weight, having their finances in order. You know, those are all very important things that comes as part of being a professional MMA fighter. You know, you just can't show up, put your trunks on and your gloves and go do your thing. Our amateurs, you know, in North Carolina, we're restricted by rules, so we don't see head kicks as amateurs, which, you know, sometimes our guys turn pro out of this state, and that's a deficiency in their game. You can see they're not used to the head kicks. So, you know, again, part of being a professional athlete is you've got to be able to adapt to those new pro rules, the elbows as well as the head kicks. And in our state, that can be a really big challenge, since in our amateur rules, we don't have those. In the state of North Carolina, a regular amateur fight is 3 3-minute rounds. As a promoter, you have the option on your championship fights as an amateur to do up to 5 rounds, up to 4 minutes each round. So, of course, at Fight Lab, we pride ourselves on being able to recruit the best caliber athletes in the amateur ranks. And so for that reason, our amateur title bouts are all 5 4-minute rounds. The professional rounds are always 5 minutes. And you do have the option, if it's a title fight, to make that 5 rounds 5 minutes. As far as a dominant skill set in MMA today, you know, I don't think it's a dominant skill set. I think that what's proven to be dominant is a dominant blend. If you start to look today in MMA, you're starting to notice that the guys that can box and the guys that can wrestle are really starting to have success. It's to the point when you get to the ground on submission and jiu-jitsu, you know, everyone knows, you know, what's gonna be thrown at them. So it's really a point of getting the fight to the ground, but getting it to the ground when you want it to go there. And if you really understand boxing and you understand angles and being able to control distance, then you can take it to the ground when you want to, or you can keep it standing as long as you want to. For a perfect example, Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz and his brother Nate are just doing wonders with controlling distance with their jab, cutting angles, and then if someone takes them down, which usually they don't because they're scared of Nate and Nick's jiu-jitsu, but if they do get taken down, then, you know, Nate and Nick can both wrestle and they can both submit. So again, I think it's a combination. I think it's a blend of that boxing pedigree and understanding the art of boxing, and then blending it with wrestling and jiu-jitsu. As far as fighters being on our card, we're bringing them in from the outside. We really try to keep it local. However, we have had people come as far as from New York. We've had people come up from Florida. I think I had one guy one time come from Louisiana. So I mean, you know, we're getting the name with Fight Lab. We're on our 20th fight. We're successful. We're gaining a name out there. We're building a brand, and it's getting to the point. I mean, I get phone calls all the time. You know, I get phone calls from California. I get phone calls from Alaska. People are willing to come in. You know, and again, it comes down to the bottom line. You know, that bottom number being in the black or being in the red. So, you know, to fly someone out from California when I have someone who's equally as talented right here in North Carolina, you know, it just doesn't make financial sense.